Hey everyone, welcome. Today is my first time doing a guest interview with a very good friend of mine, Gillan Williams. Gillan and myself went to college together for many years, and he supported me big time through a lot of my college course because he was more of the expert in it than I was. I suppose, Gillan, you did the film and media, or was it just media?
I did just film. So
You did
yeah,
just film.
yeah.
Oh, okay, sorry. Obviously, you did film. I had media and English. I was terrible at the
Mhm.
English, and I ended up loving the media side of things. But yeah, the reason I got Gillen on today is because geez, it's going to be such an important year in 2023 for video. Like now we're digital and we're kind of experts in SEO and paid media. But one thing that's happening at the moment is Google and everything that's going on in marketing is moving towards video production. And Gillen, I wanted to just get your thoughts today then on kind of what's going to be happening in 2023 and going forward. But I know that like there's a lot of these platforms they're being unbelievably, or they're pushing people, and the algorithms are pushing people who have huge amounts of content and video content. It seems they're all, I suppose, they're going for arguing or being competitive over who has the best content, who can keep people on these platforms the longest. And the video and short form video are like two of the big things. Even YouTube, you have your YouTube Shorts, Facebook, you have your TikTok, and now Twitter, since Mr. Musk has taken over, is seems to be highlighting video a lot more. So it seems to all
Mhm.
go to that space. But these platforms are really rewarding this video, and we know it's something we need to do. So again, thanks for jumping on and I suppose helping me out with a couple of questions that I'm going to have and looking for advice. But what do you feel like the ecosystem is like at the moment anyway?
I feel like it's definitely leaning towards video, but specifically about video, it's in flux at the moment because you have like the incumbents like TikTok coming in, and they've really changed the game in terms of orientation. We're pushing the vertical video,
Yeah.
and that certainly changed things. Put the audience's attention into short form video content, which the platforms then responded to. So, like Meta now have prioritized video on Instagram more than images. But in terms of how that relates to business, that is more complicated. So the
Yeah.
format is clearly short form vertical video if you're looking at the figures, but the issue with that is the accounts are transient and they're subject to falling away if there's a small change to the algorithm. Especially with TikTok, you have people with very popular accounts and they find themselves what they call shadow banned, when you just stop, the viewers just stop seeing their content. There's just been some adjustment in the algorithm and then you're losing people.
I've heard massively about the shadow banning, and it's like you don't even know if the algorithm's hitting you. It's just your engagement kind of your drops, and yeah,
Yeah,
it's becoming a big thing, isn't it?
it,
And I think
it, it
Elon
is.
Musk is the first person that's kind of talked about this, really, isn't he?
Yes, I don't know what he said about it, but I'm very aware that people have talked about it on TikTok, and so there are people, and certainly in terms of business, who shy away from that because if you spend, there's a large investment in terms of time and money. If you factor in your time spent on it and the equipment that you invest in, and some people build teams around them to get their video content up to a certain standard. If you build up an audience on one of these platforms and then you find that you're shadow banned, then this investment might be, not seeing the return that you hope in terms of engagement and then possibly conversions. So I think that what you need to do in terms of content strategy is have a combination of short form and long form content. And video podcasting for business has become much, much more popular. I think the huge success that Stephen Bartlett's got with Diary of a CEO has really shown the value of it.
I've only started following him. He's excellent, isn't he? He's
Oh,
like,
outstanding. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah, yeah. And
and he
and
seems
that's
to have large audience, doesn't he? He's like,
yeah.
it's he's got the 18 the whole way up to, well, to the 50, 60. Like he doesn't seem to have the specific audience, but he's really hitting the head on everything, isn't he?
Yeah, he has, and he's interviewing people like Stormzy and then Richard Branson. So he's the variety of people that come onto the podcast is broad, and he seems to have hit a niche with that because there is a danger if you go too broad that you're not really appealing to any one person. But he's somehow navigated that very well. But I think what's working for him is a combination of short form and long form content. So using the short form content to promote your long form content. And I think that businesses need to have that kind of a video strategy where you're investing into the appropriate content for your audience, which, podcasting is one form of that. It could be others. But then you're using short form to help promote that, but in a way that is relevant to that platform. So it's in a short answer is it's complicated, and it's still changing because the platforms are still updating their algorithms, they're responding to each other, they're keeping an eye on what the competitors' audiences are doing and then trying to outperform them. I see that YouTube Shorts will probably become a winner over TikTok, in my opinion, because they have a better relationship with content creators. And ultimately the content creators are going to go to where they're rewarded. And so yeah, it's a landscape that's in flux.
Yeah, you've hit the nail on the head with YouTube. I don't think TikTok, even though they get a huge, it's still in its infancy, in my opinion. Like I suppose with the product life cycle, that a product is a certain life cycle and it brings down. With social media platforms, it's the same thing. We just didn't know how long they'd last, but we can see it with Facebook now that as soon as the older generation kind of come on, it stops being as cool and hip, and people are moving to the new platforms, and they don't want to be on the same platforms as their parents. They want to be on the new fascinating thing, and TikTok's hit that on the head. But I think you're right with with YouTube, because the monetary value is massive on there compared to TikTok. And
because the way they reward the creators, YouTube give away, not so much with shorts, that's changing, but in terms of long form content, 55% of the ad revenue goes to the creators. It is, but because they understand that they are the product. And other platforms don't. I mean, I don't know what Meta are thinking about not monetizing properly on Instagram, because there's very little incentive other than the size of audience.
Yeah, and it seems they want to take more away from the content creators, where they're saying you have to label this as sponsored and you have to give us a cut.
Yeah, it's just it's a really backwards way of approaching it. So that's where I feel that YouTube are going to win out. Plus, they have the audience data that the others don't have, because it's part of Google. So the richness of data they have access to is going to outperform the others. That, and the way that they're looking after the content creators. Yeah,
you can see it was in Mr. Beast is one that we kind of regularly check in on. Like, that guy's audience is, did he get 100 million subscribers recently?
Yeah, he has, and he's now billions of video watches. Like, his content on its own, one video can get I don't know if it's one video or combined 300 million views.
Mad.
In a month.
What's I broke this down before on YouTube. I think it was something like it depends on the CPM, right? So the cost per 1,000 views, whatever. I think it's like some can be between $5 CPM, so you get $5 every 1,000 views, or you can go up to 20 depending on the niche.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. And so that's that's an interesting point. If you're in one of the lower performing CPMs, and I believe that sort of computer accessories is one of the lower ones, and so if you're appealing to a younger sort of gaming market, your CPM on that is quite low, plus the competition is very high. If you're in insurance, the CPM is much higher and the competition is lower. So deciding on which niche or which category you're going to go into will affect your revenue potential. And there's other things to think about, which is competition, for example, and your authority in that category.
Yeah, I saw that. What is it? Is it wealth? So anything to do with making money, so finance, anything like that, huge high CPM, or revenue per million, is it something like that, or RPM as well? And what's the other one? Health and fitness is massive.
Yeah.
What else? The SaaS kind of tools. Anyone who's willing to pay big money to get new subscribers on board, new customers, seem to be willing to pay a lot more, and there's a higher area of RPM or CPM on those people.
So, and it's as simple as look at where people are paying more for conversions. So if a company has to pay for higher conversions, per individual conversion, then that is a category which should earn you more as a content creator via AdSense.
Yeah, it is the AdSense side of things that's doing so well. Like, we have some of our niche websites where we're trying to build out, and you're right, with the insurance one, we might only have we rank under certain insurance terms in the Irish market, but we're not an insurance company, so there's compliance issues as well. But we can comment on stuff, and yeah, we get like it can be €10 a day sometimes, and that's the result of maybe 4 or 5 clicks.
Mm.
So
Yeah.
there's definitely, you're right, that industry is massive. I suppose on the side of things as well that's happening on YouTube is the YouTube automation is becoming a massive thing for content creators as well. I think it was Matthew Parr is a guy. He's very young. He's only about maybe 19 or 20, but he's hit the 2 Comma Club, as they call it, with what's the platform? It's Russell Brunson's guys. They do ClickFunnels, it's called. Do you ever hear that?
Right. Yeah.
But he's hit the 2 Comma Club, and it's all through automation of these YouTube channels where they'll like, and he gives advice on it, but he'll take like a recording of rain, and then he'll have like rain sound, and it'll be playing, but the YouTube channel will be noises to help you sleep.
Right.
And they'll be putting up these channels all the time. But if you look at some of the videos on it, there's 15 to 20 million views on some of these things, these videos.
Yeah.
And these guys they're making 5 figures a month off, just paying someone else to do the video creation for them. But as you said, that's more on the content creator side. It's how's that going to translate to business for people? That's a different story. And as you said, you're right. It is, most people are creating these long form and then bringing the short form on board to promote the long form stuff and get people on, right?
Yeah, that's right. And I guess it depends on where you are going to generate your revenue, where your intention for that is. So if it's via, AdSense, you want to, generate those your money via watches on long form content on YouTube, then yes, you want to use the short form content to draw people in. But it may be that you are the brand, you're the face of the brand, and that by people following you and associating with you, then they want to purchase from your brand. So they could be like online courses or, apparel, whatever.
So you're the guru and the trusted person that these people
in which case you're going to probably have a much greater effect by using short form content. So there's not one size fits all approach to this. It really does depend on your audience, your business, your products, and your intended business model.
Yeah, you're right. There is so many different ways to do it. As you said, Stephen Bartlett, he's my brother-in-law works with me, Cian. He's also on the podcast. He actually bought his diary there. They did a launch on the right. It's like on the 1st of January, you start this diary and you try and, I suppose, hit your goals. So as you said, there's so many different ways to promote products outside the video. So it's really great. But I suppose what goes on then, what makes a great video? And we'll be specific and make it for a business. So do you think that it has to be the person's face should be on the business to make the quality video, or is there different types of video that we should be doing?
There are different types. So you got product demonstrations where you don't need to have the face. So there are examples where that's not the case. But we were talking about 2023 being about video, and one of the strong trends that's believed going to occur next year is the face of the brand. So personalization of the brand and people representing their companies and becoming a personality. So I think that the audiences want to have that personal connection with the brand. So yes, I think that it is important, and maybe not, if not in every video, to have a format of videos, because you can have different formats of videos. You could have product demonstration videos, then you can have business intelligence videos where your face is part of that. And I think a combination of those works perfectly well. And yes, I think that it is important now for people to put that face on, because people want to make that personal connection. And also to not necessarily have a polished business face, if you like, but be honest about the struggle the company's going through. And like Stephen Bartlett, to mention him again, and his major success, he's very honest about where his company is, how the difficulties that he's gone through, as well as the triumphs that he's achieved. So having that personal approach makes you a lot more relatable. And that's what you want, because you want your audience to connect with you, relate with you, because that keeps them coming back. They feel like they know you. They then become invested in your story. And that's really very, very valuable.
Yeah. And do you think, now here's a good thing to comment on then, do you think business has to be careful who they put as the face of the business? So in other words, if you're the business owner, okay, you're really not going anywhere, like Stephen Bartlett, like he's the face, he's the brand. But say if you're now a business owner, you're not comfortable going on camera. I'm only starting to get a bit more into it. I'm not too enthusiastic about going on it, but I also know that it's so essential. So that's why I'm going to talk to you and get more practice in and get to know what to do. But do you think that businesses can make mistakes by, say, giving an employee access to be this guru, and then next thing you know, they decide to leave, and you have to start all over again? That trust is gone, and then do your audience follow that person, or do they follow the business?
Yeah, I think that that's a strong point, and I think it goes back to relevance as well. Like if you put the social media employee, as the face of the brand, why am I going to follow them? Because
Yeah,
I don't feel like as the audience that they're an authority. And I think that people feeling uncomfortable in front of the camera, well, understandably so, naturally so. Most people
yeah,
aren't quite comfortable in front of the camera initially. But in the same way that being a CEO means that you have to do some form of public speaking at some point, you need to be able to develop your communication skills with your staff. I think that developing camera speaking skills is as equally, if not more important than some of those, certainly in terms of public speaking. It is public speaking. It's a form of that. And I think to be a business leader, you need to now become comfortable in doing that.
I think you're right, to be honest. And as I was telling you, in our industry, in search engine optimization, digital marketing, you have to be out there. You have to be speaking about your expertise in order for customers and clients to trust you. And to be honest, I've started thinking that I'm not doing my clients a service by not posting online and not giving them the information. They deserve to be informed of that. Your clients need to be told. And I've noticed that I'm telling people, get your video testimonials, make sure that you're posting, are you comfortable going on video? So I'm telling people, do as I say, not as I do. And I don't think that's a good approach. So I want to try and do more of this, where I'm actually implementing what I'm giving advice on. So that's
You,
definitely
you,
something I
you,
need to consider.
you've touched on something which is really important, and it's something that I also struggle with, which is consistency.
Mm.
Your audience will become used to hearing from you regularly, and when you stop posting, then they will engage with you less. There was a trend for a while, certainly on YouTube and Instagram, of posting every day. That's not so much the case now. That you don't get rewarded for that, but there needs to be some form of regularity. So if it's weekly or monthly, that's fine, but make sure that you maintain that, because if you drop off, your audience engagement will drop with it.
Okay. And there are ways around this, right? You can do things like not everyone can commit. People go on holidays, Christmas happens, or whatever holiday is in whatever country you're in. These things happen. So it's good to batch, right? Or to plan ahead and to create a calendar. Is that something that you do with clients and advise to do?
Yes, it certainly is. So we have a podcast service. It's called the Content Pyramid. So you record a video podcast, that then becomes your audio podcast as well. And then you have 3 social videos cut from the video, and then we transcribe your audio podcast. You get all of this content for one recording. So it's highly cost and time efficient for everybody. But what we do is, one of the clients we've got planned next year is we will do in batches. So we will record a quarter's worth of content and then batch like that. And doing it every quarter works because I feel like you can sort of project 3 months ahead. But if you want to record like a year's worth of content, you have no idea. I mean, we're quite familiar. You have no idea what's going to happen next year. No one saw the pandemic coming and how much that disrupted absolutely everything. And so you can do it in batches, but do your batches in relatively short periods so that you're still
quarterly. Yeah, that's good advice, because, like, as you said, things can happen, pandemics, or I don't know if you're a travel industry and you're advising people to travel to this country, but at that time, I don't know, volcano erupts or something that cancels all flights, then all of a sudden your content strategy is kind of gone out the window. In those situations, is there something you can do, like maybe just have evergreen stuff where you speak about advice, maybe something to slot in?
Yeah. So in that sort of case, well, I mean, not if there's a sort of topical subject like volcano eruptions, you got to be on top of that. But then there might be periods where you, like you say, you're on holiday or something happened, an illness or whatever. Then having some for content that you can drop in to replace that is a very good sort of insurance to maintain your engagement.
Okay, yeah, that's a good point. And when these things happen and your content schedule goes awry because of a situation, as you said, like illness or whatever, it probably is a good idea to to jump on trends if they happen, right? So you can like cut what you've planned to say, oh no, we'll push this back another month because this is particularly happening at this time.
You can. I think you can also supplement. So it doesn't have to be an either or. You don't have to
Okay.
polarize your content. So if something happens where there's a strong trend, then do an additional video, an additional content to cover that. But I think it is equally important to maintain consistency as much as you can. But
Yeah.
also, your audiences respect you for being authentic and being honest. So if there is something happening, you say, we have had unexpected circumstance, so our content isn't, you're not getting your regular content, but we're doing this instead, or we're going to do this to get us back on track. Your audience is going to respect that and understand that. And I think it's when there's no communication, it's not that they punish you by saying, well, I'm not hearing from them, I'm not going to watch them. They're just passively not going to think of you. And so that it's maintaining that communication with them that's going to maintain your engagement.
Okay, that's a great point, actually. I did work for a company before where they spoke about travel destinations, as an example, maybe Nicaragua. And over there they had obviously there was a military coup, I think there was at one time, or there was some problems with elections. So straight away they pulled any content was in the I suppose that was going to be promoted. But what they did is they did do a really good job of commenting to say, look, we still think it's a fantastic country, but at this current time there are diplomatic issues.
Right.
So we wouldn't advise travel there. So you're right. I think customers and clients and your followers do love that authenticity.
That's an interesting point. There's a company that I follow from a previous business, and I stayed in touch with them called Ticket to Ride, and they do surf camps all around the world. And they did one in Nicaragua, I think, but they are also well established in Sri Lanka. And I find it interesting because they have people who are posted there, and they are giving on the ground information about what it's like in Sri Lanka. And so the perception now in general is Sri Lanka is a place to avoid because there's been a lot of problems. But they're saying from the ground, actually, it's stable. It's incredibly cheap right now. There's no crowds. If you want to come and surf waves, there's barely anybody on the waves. It's a great time to come over. So that's a great example of maybe changing what you're doing, but keeping an honest and open communication with people. So that's responding to a trend while still delivering regular content.
Okay, that's great. Now, I suppose here's on to the thing where I really wanted to get in touch with you, because I've seen a lot of your videos that you're putting up on LinkedIn, and you're speaking quite a lot about storytelling and the importance of this for business. Can you tell us a little bit about what your process is for storytelling and how people should go about starting that process? Because for me, I find as though, look, I'm in a specific industry. I think some people would find what I do boring, and what I do from a story point of view, like my day is going in and editing websites or reviewing content. Should I be, say, doing a quick view of me having a coffee and coming back and then getting into it and telling people what I'm doing on a daily basis? Or do you think it can get repetitive, or is there ways to do it, or how do you plan out your storytelling?
So what I do is I bring it back to what a story is. And a story is a way of communicating with people. It's the most effective form of that. Every culture has their storytelling traditions, but also there are universal forms of storytelling that cross over most cultures and time as well. The excellent book, The Hero with a Thousand Faces, goes through that, and how through many cultures you'll have the same story of the hero's journey, because it's a really effective way of people communicating information, and it's something that people connect to. So take advantage of that format. In a very basic form, think of a middle, beginning, and an end. So that's one part. So you're going to introduce your story, you're going to discuss what it is about, and then you're going to wrap it up at the end. So that's very basic sort of structure. But within that structure, should be some form of conflict. Now, that doesn't mean aggression. It can be just a problem that you're trying to solve. So as an example, you have a problem, present the problem, and say, maybe you're a detergent company, and, your whites just aren't white enough. Right? That's the problem. And then you go into it, and you tried washing it, and you tried the traditional means, and it's just a problem for you. When you're laying it out, people are going to actually identify with that. And that's the other really important thing, is the conflict should be relatable. Okay. People identify with it and they feel like you're talking about them. They're far more likely to connect with what you're talking about, and then resolve it at the end. So you can clearly review our product will wash your whites whiter than ever before, right? Now that's a very traditional version of that. So let's relate it to you with SEO on a website. Well, you can talk about going in and introduce, we're working with this company, specific, here's the conflict, here's the problem, and this is what we're going to do to resolve it. That's your second act. And then your third, your wrap up is, this is what we did to resolve it. And so you give people that satisfaction. So it's a very simple structure. And it's very, very effective. And in fact, what I'm also doing at the moment is I'm developing a course called Storytelling for Business. It's going to be launching in about January time.
Nice.
So yeah, and it's for that, because it's the most effective way of maintaining a connection with people and transmitting your message. And on that point, there's a temptation to say a lot, especially in short form content. But just as a sort of a tip is if it's short form content, keep it to one single message, because you have such a short space of time, and the viewer's attention span is very, very short. If you try and say too much, they won't really retain much of what you've said, so they'll take away very little. Just say one thing, but say it really, really well, really clearly, and people are far more likely to retain that message.
Okay, that's a good example. So yeah, for me, when I'm doing, so if I was to go about it, I look at some influencers and see what they do. So surely no one's going to care what I'm doing in the mornings, or here's my process. But I suppose, as you said, if you have clients and they trust you, then you're really just speaking to a small niche worth of people, aren't you? You're not speaking to everybody, and it's trying to retain them and just show them that you care about the work that you're doing for them. That might be one way of looking at it. As you were saying, like, I'd love to be able to say, oh, you know, here's the issue that this website is having, and this is what I can do to resolve it, and here's how I went about resolving it. But a lot of the time I have NDAs with companies, so I can't really talk about the website. So should I be like, would storytelling involve me educating other people as well in the process of SEO? Like, should I be doing that kind of thing as well? Should that be incorporated? And will the short term, like, I don't know, just it's I want to go about it, I want to start, but it's like, what would be the first thing I should do? Should I just be looking at getting more comfortable on video and just maybe documenting my day as an example? Or is that just too broad and will annoy your current audience? Or do you reckon people would want to know?
I think the important thing to do is, especially initially when you're first starting out, is create a structure. So you want to plan your content, and that will give you more confidence in terms of being on camera, because you're not going to be thinking about, well, what am I going to say? You already know what you're coming in with. So that would be the first thing I would do is
so create a structure.
Yeah, exactly. And then record that structure. And then there's lots of apps on your phone you can use, sort of like iMovie or Adobe Rush, or there's lots of others to edit that together. So don't worry if you stumble or stutter or you want to change location. Like, just cut. It's fine. You can do that.
I have noticed that people, you know, they seem very good on camera. They come across so well, but I've tried doing it myself and then stutter after maybe 20 seconds and start again. But then when I look at some of the influencers who are obviously very good at this and documenting their lives and creating this story, they're talking 1 second at this angle, and then the next angle they've changed to this. So they've obviously made that edit and cut, but that's fine to do because it doesn't interrupt the flow of the video, right?
Yeah, well, flow is, in that example, flow is very important. So it's the audio flow that you're trying to maintain. If the cuts make the speech seem inconsistent, then you're going to pull people out of it. But so it doesn't really matter if the video cuts to the same angle, which used to be a cardinal sin, but it just works on short form content.
Yeah.
So that's fine. But you just need to make sure that the audio maintains that flow. And in terms of like vlogging, which is what you're describing, you know, showing people what you're doing with your everyday business, that's fine. But everything you do, before you do that, you should consider has to be relevant to your audience. Everything you film, every decision you make has to relate to them. Are they going to find it interesting? Because if they, for more than 4 or 5 seconds, if they're finding it boring, they're off and they're going to go and find the next video. And you're going to get punished by having lower retention rates. So if you are the type of character that can maintain someone's interest consistently, and absolutely, you know, that's a great idea. If you're not, and be humble and realistic about who you are. If you are that kind of person, capitalize on that, because that's a fantastic resource. If you're not, that's fine. Don't do that. Take a far more structured approach,
right? And
that's going to be more successful for you.
Okay. Would you advise like maybe testing it then as well? So I might try that form. Like one idea that we had was, our industry changes so much. There's a news announcements all the time. So, we could kind of become, and a lot of people in the industry do this, but they'll do it on camera like this, but maybe a more personal approach. Like, here's some of the news that's happened over the last 24 hours. Facebook has done this announcement. Instagram has brought out this new feature. Check it out. And we were going to do something like, coffee with Cian and Cian, or something where we just discuss our news. That was one of our ideas. But that might be one thing to test. But as you said, then maybe the structured one is much better, where we actually kind of put a bit of effort into the editing and maybe plan out a storyboard of a piece of content, right?
I honestly think you should do both.
Yeah.
So there's, especially with business, a video for business, there's two types of video you can create. There's the highly polished video content, and when you're
That's
doing
what I've seen on Clarity Video. Very good.
well,
yeah.
thank you very much.
Yeah.
And that needs to be as well produced as you can possibly get it.
Okay.
And the better produced and the slicker you can make it look, then the greater value your audience is going to give it.
And that's what should be in the ads, right? So if you're going to
Yeah.
put ads out on Facebook where your brand is going out there, there's no point in putting out a brand story of me having a coffee and just, who's this guy telling news? They really need to have an introduction to who you are as a company first before you go down that route, right?
Certainly in an ad, yeah, I would suggest that. Yeah, and whatever the video looks like in your ad, it should reflect your branding. So the production can be slick, and even if it's a fairly grassroots, rustic type of brand, the content can look like that. But in terms of the editing, the audio quality, the camera quality that you have, the transitions, they should all be as slick as possible and as polished as you can get it, regardless of what's on screen. But then you have the other kind of form, which is UGC, user generated content. And that can be, you're maybe at a trade show or wherever, and you've had some news come in, and you just pull the camera up, you're walking through the crowd and say, I've heard this news, this is what, and by doing that ad hoc, or maybe it's where you got a cup of coffee and you're on your way to work and you're just talking to your camera phone and you're sipping your coffee, and it becomes like a regular morning vlog that you do. That's fine, and there's a real place for that. And especially when you have your business leader, your CEO or department head or whoever, whatever it is, if they're creating that in conjunction with polished content, that's great, because people feel like that's the branding. So you've positioned yourself in your market with whatever that's going to look like, but make that as polished as you can. And now I feel like I'm getting to know the person, because one of the dangers you can have, certainly on a vertical format, so your TikTok and Instagram and such, is that if it's too polished, you actually find that people just swipe through, because they feel like it's a sponsored content, or it's a promotion of some sort. So there is an element of keeping it rustic. And to that point, the Jimmy, who's Mr. Beast, that you mentioned earlier, I think, or maybe in this whole conversation earlier, he's absolutely killing it on YouTube, but he will not film in greater than 4K than 1080p. He doesn't do 4K. Full resolution. Yeah, and that's a really important reason, is because it will, if it gets too polished for his branding, which is him and his friends doing fun things, then it's going to start taking it away from that, damage the authenticity, and he will then lose some content, lose some viewers, because they will feel like it's less relevant to them. So in some cases, having that lesser slick approach can work, but it needs to be very specific. And the UGC, so that like vlog style that I just mentioned, that's absolutely fine. But for most companies, you're going to want to mix that in with highly polished content or highly produced.
Okay. Well, that's great advice then on that. So we'll take that into consideration. So we really do need to think about what kind of brand and what way we want to come across as well.
Yeah.
That's definitely something that we'll need to sit down and have a chat about then. Because maybe the UGC, the user generated content, is something that we do maybe for like Instagram, YouTube Shorts, TikToks, that kind of thing. But then maybe it doesn't suit LinkedIn as much, and it might not suit your long form content on YouTube. That might be the more polished stuff. So probably choosing where you put that as well is important, right?
Yeah, it can. And LinkedIn can be a combination. I feel like I put on videos where it's UGC with me talking personally, and that's had fine engagement on LinkedIn. But you need to use it sparingly, I think. But LinkedIn is a very different beast, because it is a business platform.
B2B, yeah.
Business network. Yeah, exactly. So you do need to keep that in mind very much when your tone of voice becomes important there. So the way that we're speaking now, I would say would be ideal for LinkedIn. But if we were to speak in this tone of voice that we have for this conversation on YouTube Shorts, it won't work as well, because that is higher energy, and that's what's going to be expected with your audience. And this is certainly shown in my content. It needs to be punchier than this if you want to maintain that engagement. But if you put it on YouTube in the long form content, then this would be absolutely fine.
Okay.
It might be if you're it can seem overwhelming as a business coming to this sort of video approach to marketing, and it is. So getting the advice of experts is certainly going to help, but it doesn't mean that you have to go all in and get it all right. Like you were saying, testing the waters is very important, and you can plan your audience. You can decide who your audience are. You may think you know who your audience are, but over time they will tell you
completely different. Yeah,
exactly. So that's where you need to pay attention to your data. And YouTube's very useful for that, because they will give you all data. They'll tell you what gender they are, where they are, what age they are, exactly when on your video they dropped off. And by reviewing that data, you can then produce better and more relevant content for your audience. But
so going back through your video.
Say again, sorry.
Yeah, going back through the video and then like spotting where they've fallen off. That's a really good idea. So you know then that this type of content, I said something here about X and people just dropped off. They didn't like what I said. Don't say that again. Or I made a change to the angle, or something made them leave at that point.
Yeah, so or actually,
we paused.
Not changing the angle can be an issue.
Yeah.
So you can be saying the same thing, but then if you cut to if you just have one locked off camera, that's very static. But if you have a monologue of something that you need to communicate, then set up two cameras. Yeah. And then you can either cut and not look and have it as a side angle, kind of like this angle here. I'm not looking directly at camera. So you can have one angle where you're talking off camera, one angle when you're talking to the camera, and then you can cut away to stock footage as well.
Okay, so making that change keeps the audience more engaged. Yes. So in other words, if I take now the webcam here and say, right, I'm going over here to have a look at a different angle, it might be, it could engage the audience a little bit more, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And it really does. Because what it does, it re-engages their attention, because something's changed. So their brain is geared to look at the change. If it becomes static, that's a problem. And the frame of mind that people have when they're consuming social video is they don't want something static. They want to be entertained. What they're seeking is dopamine when they're watching these videos.
Okay.
So you need to tap into that, and that gives you, and that can be through surprise, it can be through entertainment, it can be through humor, changing angles, revealing.
I've seen that with YouTube videos where someone's, as you said, changing angles are like they'll be talking, they'll say something, and and then you want to make someone shout, and then they'll cut to like a picture of like Arnold Schwarzenegger or a video of him shouting, and then cut back to themselves. So yeah, it definitely does work.
It does, yeah, but also revealing things for people, like let's use Diversity CEO as another example. The richness of information that people are giving on that podcast. Certainly for me, that's why I'm a listener. Yeah. But then I have other clients of mine, Acrivia, their podcast is coming out soon. They're giving they're giving insights into medical research,
right,
that you probably wouldn't be able to get in many other places online. So your viewer, it's unique, but also it's very rewarding. And so you want your content to be rewarding, and that all really circles back to creating relevant content for your viewer. What's your viewer's intention for watching it? If you're an entertainer, then you got to entertain them. Maybe you're not. Maybe you have an SEO company, not entertaining, Cian, but
I'm just sitting here like
not traditionally seen as an entertaining thing, but your delivery can give that. But also you could give that dopamine hit, which is what people want, by giving them information, giving them insights. And
so it's the value.
Now I'm satisfied by that. I want to come back for more of that.
Yeah, it definitely is the value. I've noticed see on LinkedIn as well. Like we've gotten one or two clients from LinkedIn because we noticed other people in the SEO industry were doing this. They'd like with SEO, it's all about gaining traffic and more leads and more revenue for companies. That's what we do. The whole point of SEO is to make either build your brand or make more money, make more revenue, get more lead sales. And what we were doing is we were taking screenshots of, we were leaving out who the client was so that nothing was, there was never any information. But we did leave in the numbers and how the graphs have increased. And we saw someone and we said, oh, this is in the finance industry. And we got a finance client off of that because they actually liked that. They said, oh, you've done that for someone else. We want you to do that for us. And it's a big thing in the SEO industry. The graphs that prove the work, I suppose, is
Sure.
one thing.
Yeah. That's demonstrating authority and value, and I think that's very important. Yeah, because it's a minefield out there, and there are a lot of people who are just spouting content because they know how to work an algorithm, and they know how to keep people engaged, and they're just making up nonsense. And you see that a lot when people report.
They're making a lot of money doing it too.
they are, but then it's a short-term strategy, because eventually the audience is going to figure this out. And I'm not going to name names, but there are people a couple of them on TikTok, who touted themselves as news sources, but have been time and time again proven to be misinforming their audience because they're saying something that's sensational, and then they lost their trust. So yeah,
I've seen a lot of that recently. Actually, there's the that guy who is it, the Liver King. He was out. He said he was completely natural, didn't he? That he didn't take any steroids, but then he ate natural liver and he built up his physique using that. But now he actually came out with a video and he said, yes, I do take PDEs.
right.
PDEs, is it performance enhancing drugs? And like his whole audience was built up that he was natural, and then so that was a mad one. But seemingly he's still doing all right. He still has an audience, but he's definitely lost trust in a lot.
Yeah. And I think honesty and it is absolutely important. Like, you should, at no point should you ever be misleading your audience.
You will get found out.
You will. You absolutely will. And in the pursuit of engagement, I think it's a very dangerous path to walk.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. So you touched on something a bit earlier. You were saying about the structure of a video. So you're saying the story. How would you typically start? There's obviously a beginning, a middle, and an end, right? So maybe there's in between stuff in there. What way would you structure your videos generally?
Well, there's one principle is show, don't tell.
Okay.
So if you're, the first thing is if you're new to it, then introduce who you are. If you're well established, then just go straight into telling people what this is about. In the same way that when you're in a uni course, it's storytelling again. When you're doing an assignment, in your introduction, tell people what you're going to tell them. And like Mr. B says, Jimmy does this very, very well. At the beginning of the video, he tells you exactly what he's going to deliver.
Okay.
Then you get on with doing it. So you're in the middle of telling them, and then you sum it up at the end, or you give the delivery at the end, and you tell them what you told them. And what you should do is, for as long as you can, and this is difficult, this is a skill, is wait until fairly close to the end to actually deliver what you said you were going to deliver them, because that will maintain your engagement, your attention. So if you
is this kind of like sorry to interrupt, is this kind of like the AIDA principle within copywriting, where it's like attention, interest, desire, and action? It's kind of like that formula, but more in the story form.
Yes, I think so. Yeah. I'm not very familiar with that, but from what you're saying, it sounds like it is. So introduce them, tell them what you're going to tell them, and just go straight into it. But give the resolution or whatever it is that they're seeking fairly close to the end, because that way you retain, because the algorithm rewards retention and engagement. So the longer you can maintain that, the better. So we were saying how to start it. Tell me what you're going to say.
Okay.
Get on with talking about it, but then give the full resolution at the end.
Right. And then the solution. And then obviously what action to take then is a big thing, right?
Yeah.
If you're not, you're just kind of leaving them in limbo. Okay.
That's it. Yeah. And you want to give people that satisfaction, because that's what you're doing at the beginning. If you want to get into a psychological way of thinking about it, is you're creating a knowledge gap at the beginning. So you're saying, I'm going to show you how to improve your website SEO, certain element of it. Tell them at the beginning, you've created a knowledge gap. So they're aware that there's something they don't know, but they want to find out what that is. And then you go through the process, and then you fulfill that knowledge gap at the end. And that then gives them that sense of satisfaction that they want to going to come back to you for. That happens in filmmaking all the time. And so you use knowledge gaps all the time, and it's used again and again because it's very effective. So if you have a scene, there might be that the audience has a knowledge gap. They don't know who's come in. They don't know who this character is, but the way the characters are behaving around them suggests that there's something sinister going on. That keeps you engaged because you want to find out what's going to happen. The other way it could be is that you know that there's a knife in the drawer, and these characters are moving around. So it's moving towards the drawer. So-and-so doesn't know what's in the drawer. You as the audience know there's a knowledge gap, and our minds hate a void. So you want to fill it, and on your behalf or on somebody else's. So you stay, and what this void does, it creates tension, and people like to stick through something until they get the resolution of the tension.
Okay.
And that's the conflict.
And then, as you said, in regards to business then as well, is at the end, you've shown them, you've filled that knowledge gap, and now it's like, you know, do you want us to help you? And here's how we can help you. And do you reckon that's okay to do? Where I notice, like on YouTube, you'll have people saying, make sure you follow me, you know, click on that bell button, make sure don't click the personalized, click every notification. Do you reckon that kind of thing is bad, or is that's okay to do? Because I see it on most YouTube channels.
So, and there's two different things you've asked there, really. So one is the sell, which is, you know, you're pitching, we can do this for you. Be sparing with that, because people, again, what's the audience intention when they're watching content? It's normally because they have a knowledge gap of information that they want to fill. Certainly when they're watching video related to a business, like an SEO channel, they're not primed to be sold to. Yeah. So be sparing with that message. But in terms of saying, please follow, like, subscribe, that's become standard to the point where nobody is bothered by that. That's just become something people expect you to say, and you should say it, because it will increase your engagement, will increase your subscribers and your video likes, and those are stats that really, really matter. If you follow that ranked in the algorithms for all of these platforms.
Yeah, I noticed that a lot of people, what they'll do is they won't like interrupt their current video. They'll actually have something that they'll have it edited, and they'll like slot it in at a certain point of the video when people are most engaged, and then they just have this pre-recorded ad that kind of goes in, and that's how a lot of people tend to do it, or what I've seen anyway. But okay, well, it's good to ask.
And on that point, so before you start, like just want to drop in something there, because we can get really granular about storytelling there at that point of when to drop that type of message in. So if you're doing longer form content, there's a format that really works, and again, this works in film as much as it does on video, on video for business, which is having your A story and your B story, and you cut between them in film. But in terms of how does that look for business? If you have a podcast, so you have your introduction, and then you're going to tell them what your A story is. And the A story is in terms of hierarchy. So A being the most important and B being the second most important thing. And the A story is what the audience are really there to find out. So you tell them what that is. And you say, we're going to tell you about how to rank higher than your competition, for example. That's your A story. And then you tell them what the B story is. And the B story might be, but first of all, we're going to drop into some industry news. And so here I am talking with Cian about SEO industry news, and you go into your B story. So the B story is what you tell first. Now, what you've done is you've created that knowledge gap, and then you've got your B story. You're talking through that, and your audience know after this, he's going to tell me what I'm really here for. Okay. Your B story has to be engaging enough to maintain their interest. Now, just before you transition into the A story, and you say, so next up, we're going to talk about how to rank higher. That's when you drop that subscribe message, because they're going to want to stay, and they're like, this guy's going to deliver what you promised on. Yes, I'll follow him. Yes, I like this video.
Okay, so that's a great one. So when you go back, sorry, but before we go back, make sure that you subscribe.
Or if you're the type of business where you might have ads slotted into your content, so like, because with YouTube you can select when your ad plays, or on podcasts as well. So podcast platforms, you can do the same thing. That's the perfect time to do that, because you will retain your audience through that ad, and your audience will reward you by staying through the ad. So you get that revenue because they're waiting for the delivery, which they know is imminent. So they don't want to skip because they don't want to miss that delivery.
Yeah, and if they try and skip ahead, they will miss it, or they go halfway
Definitely.
through the delivery. Yeah, no, that makes sense. And you've touched on the short form versus long form content, and that's really something that I just want to come back to a little bit. So when we record, like this podcast, an example, you've given some excellent, I suppose, tips and tricks along the way of this podcast. This YouTube, we'll put it up on YouTube as well. But we should be taking this, right? And we should be making shorter clips. So when you talk about, say, storytelling, we should make a quick short-term video about that, right? And just
Yeah,
cut little
you
bits
should.
out of this.
Yeah, which is exactly what we did. So I mentioned the content pyramid. So we have this format that we do for our clients for podcasting, and part of that is you got your video podcast, you take the audio, you got your audio podcast, you're increasing the channels you're distributing your message over, but then you clip your shorter videos out of that, and those are your ads. Now the interesting thing with those is you actually intentionally don't deliver on the knowledge gap.
Okay, you're piquing the
That's
interest.
an ad, and that's a different thing. So what you're doing with that one, because that's not around the video, is you ask the question about storytelling for business, and I go into the answer, and then you can stop, and then you can say, for the whole video, come watch us on YouTube. Now that works well as an ad for long form content, but if that's the only short form content that you're putting out, that's not delivering to your audience. So you should mix that in with other short form content on those platforms.
Okay. All right, that's really good. Yeah, no, I get you. So as I said, the UGI or UGC would be an example of that then. That's brilliant.
Yeah.
All right. So you also spoke about the types of video. So do you have a list of the types of video? So there's like testimonials, right? Would be one. What else? There's like brand intro.
Yeah, so you got testimonials, and don't use, because there's a temptation for people to use paid actors for that, and they'll read real testimonials. Don't do that. Warts and all, just have genuine, real customers for that. So your testimonials, product overview, brand overview, and the product overview might be demonstrations or insights into that. Brand overview will be who we are rather than what we do. So there's a difference between that. And then industry insights, so that's sort of demonstrating your knowledge. I mean, it's very broad. What else would you have? UGC, which is that personal branding. Yes, there's quite a variety there.
Okay. Well, that's brilliant then. So we kind of have a lot of the story and what kind of content to do, but just want to move a little bit to the essentials for recording. So I can see there behind you, you have some very fancy equipment.
Yeah, this is some of this. So this stuff up here, this one I bought myself, but that camera and these cameras are my grandfather's, and this up here, and that because he was a professional photographer and videographer, so it's kind of in the blood. And I just love that.
So it stayed in the family then. That's great.
Yeah. So I inherited those off him, and I just love the aesthetic of these old cameras. But yeah, so and then I use a Canon EOS R. I'm going to be soon upgrading to a Blackmagic 6K. And then
6K.
Yeah, because then you can downsample from that. And the reason I'm going for that is because it has 10-bit color. Don't obsess too much about what your megapixels are or resolutions. That's not the most important thing as long as it's over 1080p. The Alexa is the most common camera used for film and video production and television production. Doesn't actually deliver 4K.
Right.
But it has incredibly good color science in it, so the colors are richer, so it appears to be a better resolution image. So you should be thinking more about what your camera is filming and how well that looks rather than the resolution. 1080p is a minimum, but if you can't do 4K, don't worry about it. And most smartphones now can do that, can do 1080p or 4K, but you want to have your lighting appropriate. So try to avoid direct sunlight, trying to avoid where things are blowing out. There we go. See, now you can see that you're overexposing your face, but
overexposed there.
Yeah, and you've got your harsh shadows. So you want to avoid that. But if you have this softer light, which you have coming in from the side, and for me, I've got a big ring, not ring, like a big diffuse light here.
Yeah.
Make that look softer. So think about your lighting. Try and use diffuse lighting if you can. And that can be standing next to a window on an overcast day. If there's strong sunlight coming in, try and use somewhere where the light isn't bouncing directly onto you. So that's important. Audio.
It's not even something I considered today. You know, I was like, oh, this is just kind of like I treated this like hopping on. It's probably something I should have, because I'm only noticing now I'm a lot more red than you are, but that's because my screen in the background here is this color. It's like this pink hue on an apple. So it's actually, but your lighting is way better. So that's something I should consider then.
It is, and then you can even get into, I didn't turn it on today, but you can get into accent lighting. So I think I'll pop this on. So you can put a splash of accent lighting in the background there like that, and that can make it more interesting.
Very good.
And
I see these quite a lot on YouTube, actually.
Yeah, you can. And yeah, there's a lot you can do in terms of creating. There's a thing called motivated light as well. So if you have these lights and you're creating a scene, then maybe I'm getting too detailed for our audience here, but if you have a bright light, then it should make sense as to why that light's there. For this diffuse light here, it looks like it might be coming from a window, that's fine. But if you have very strong lights that don't look like they're coming from somewhere that they actually should be, then that can be a bit of a problem for people. Probably not something your audience need to worry about too much. But in terms of just
be clear, like, isn't it? Just make sure it's like not dark at the very least, especially for, what is it, UGC, these generated content. But if it's the professional stuff, you want to have way better lighting.
Yes, you do. Yeah. But at which stage it might be more cost effective to hire in a company who are going to be able to help you with that, because believe me, the cost of video equipment can mount very, very quickly and become very, very costly. So it's probably more cost effective to hire someone in. When you're using a phone, for example, for recording, audio is very, very important. So the onboard microphone might not be the best, but you can get things like this, which is a phone specific microphone. If I just pull this bit off, so there's a connection here. So if that fits
for the iPhone.
For the iPhone, and so by doing that, you're going to enhance the quality of your recording, the audio recording, a lot, and that makes a big difference. Video doesn't sound good; it doesn't look good, and that's just the way that people consume these things. So you want to make sure that you do that.
And especially if you're out and about as well, because if you're trying to do user content outside and there's lots of wind, it's obviously going to be breaking. So something like that, and they can be very cost effective, can't they? You can get something like that.
Yes, they can. Yeah, but not too much. I mean, you shouldn't really need to spend more than sort of 50 quid. And that should be fine. I mean, you can go to crazy money, but yeah, and you do want to use this. It can look a bit funny, but that's on the bottom of your phone. But this will
so that guy has a squirrel on his phone. What's he doing?
Yeah, and that's another thing you need to overcome is the self-conscious part of when you're filming.
I'm dreadful at it. I'm like out in public. I'm going to do a quick little video here because I have a travel website that like I love travel as well, and that's something that I need to do because obviously I'm going around to different areas in Ireland and speaking about them. And when I see someone coming, camera down, I'm not going to be one of those influencers caught in the wild videos.
Yeah, right.
But I do need to get over it.
Yeah, you do. And again, actually, just think about your audience, and you're doing that video for them, not for the random guy who's over there who might be judging you. You're probably never going to see him again. Don't worry about it. And I think that people are getting more used to people talking to themselves on camera because it's just becoming more popular. If you
and you're seeing a lot of people dancing on camera now as well. We were driving past. I'm living in Cove in County Cork at the moment, but we were driving past. It's called the Ratings, where it's like a lovely view. But we were driving past, and there was a load of kids in there, but they were like in unison doing a dance, and obviously someone was recording on the phone. I was like, oh god, that's they're trying to go viral down there.
Yeah, they could well be. Yeah, and you get a tripod as well. So that's important too. If you want to,
I have this one, which is a
Joby. Yeah, fantastic. Yes,
and I've been using this with the camera, so that was like about 80 quid, I think it was. And this extension for the phone was maybe tenner on Amazon, and I used the iPhone for a lot of stuff at the moment. Even though I have invested, I don't know what your thoughts on these ones are, but it's like the Canon M50s. It's
the M50 is that the Mark II? Yeah, that's fine. That's a great camera. And the price of these cameras, and like I call them prosumer, where it's not quite professional, but it's the higher end consumer.
It does what you need to do, because I did a lot of research into it, and it was like, okay, well, you need something that has maybe autofocus, because that gives you that little professional look. So I was like, okay, that was, but then I'm looking, and sometimes my iPhone actually has autofocus on it now because it's one of the newer versions, and it's like it almost looks just as good. But I do think that sometimes if I'm sitting down and I'm doing more of a long form, I'm going to use the Canon M50. But again, it's not essential because the quality on the, I think that's a 13, is just as good. But out and about, I'm not a professional at any means, but I do like to take videos when I'm out. And we did get one of the little GoPros,
Right.
which are quite cool as well. But again, I've do you know what? I end up just using the camera a lot of the time on the phone. So
Yeah, and the audio quality on your camera is going to be much better than on that. And the GoPro, you can get good footage if you use it in the right way. If
got a
you're going to
B-roll, right? You
it's
could use it as
B-roll.
B-roll. Yeah.
Yeah. And you can put it into places where and get angles that you just wouldn't with other cameras because it's tough. So you're on a boat, well, then just have it down by the water. So you've got a fantastic, the water rushing nearby. There's that's a great angle, but you might not want to put your phone down there. But so you're yeah, using it for B-roll would be perfect for that. I wouldn't necessarily use that as a piece to camera, which is a talking to camera.
So for beginners, what would be your essentials to start with? And as I said,
start with get get a smartphone, shoot with that. If you can shoot 4K, by all means do that, but deliver at 1080, especially on Facebook, because it downgrades the quality. I don't know why it does it, but it does this weird thing where if you deliver 4K, they crush and compress it so much
that they don't want to save 4K on their servers, probably.
Yeah, so what they do, I think, is with their compression software, is it actually downgrades it so it looks worse than a native 1080 video does, and all of these formats deliver in 1080. So don't worry about 4K unless you're doing broadcast, so that's fine, or you're doing long form content on YouTube. So a smartphone, and most smartphones now, it doesn't have to be an iPhone, you can Android, most decent ones now, the cameras on that are perfectly adequate. Get a decent microphone, so something like this, get a tripod, you're good to go. Because at that stage, especially with user generated content, that you're going to be hitting the production standard that your audience is going to expect, to the point where that won't be in your way. That won't be dropping the audience out of the video because the audio sounds bad. They think once you've got that, the thing you should be obsessing over is what you're saying, and really plan that, because you can have people, and you see it often, where they just have all the equipment, they spend tens of thousands and they don't know what they're going to talk about, and they haven't got the engagement they want, and it's because they haven't done the planning, and that's the most important thing.
Right. Yeah, no, it is. It's about what you're producing and is it valuable, and as long as it's not grainy and your speech isn't, I suppose, crackly, you're satisfying the user needs then just by having those kind of two elements in place, right?
Yes, yeah. And then talking about the M50, if you have a well-lit scenario, the quality of that's fine, because the resolution is fine. The color science is okay. I think it's 8-bit. If what you want to do is get the best glass that you can, so that'll be the lens. So like if you get something like this, this is quite an expensive lens, and this is a 1635, but what this has is a very shallow depth of field on it, if you want. Right. So you could go down to, I think this is 1.2. And what that means is you can, now you can see the background here, it's fairly in focus because I use this to demonstrate my brand. So I want you to be able to see what is on that background, but you often see a shallow depth of field where the background is blurred out.
For me, I should, because I haven't set up anything behind me. There's like the worst Christmas decoration setup ever there. My wife put up, and I haven't put anything here. The only thing I did in the room was put up some of those, I suppose, the sound blocking ones, because it was quite echoey in here. But yeah, that was really it. But I do want to get some shelves that might have, like, I don't know, like Moz's, put these little things up that people in the SEO industry would recognize, or like quirky things like that.
Yeah. But yeah, in terms of the camera, on that, get the best lens that you can get, because that is what is really going to up your quality. And then when just getting past that, if you want to do video in-house, by all means, go through it. There's a very rich resources online to look into how to improve your video production. But at that point, it might become more cost effective to use a third party.
Yeah, definitely. And of course, one that we'll suggest definitely is Clarity Video. We've definitely seen some of your quality online, Gillan. You know, some of the things you've done been fantastic. As I said, I was talking to you earlier about Scott Quinnell. I saw that was up there. He looks fantastic there in the video.
Oh, he's
He's doing a
great.
new
And you know,
series.
he's one of the nicest guys I've met, and not in terms of just as a celebrity, but like just in general. He's a lovely, lovely guy, very easy to work with, and very professional as well. So
Yeah,
it didn't matter what time of the day or night it is, him to deliver, and he just, with the cameras running, he just starts delivering, and he brings the energy. He's great. He's a fantastic storyteller, very funny man. Yeah, I love working with Scott,
that's
and
what
I got
that's
a
what
lot
you
of
need
work.
for an audience, right?
It is, yeah, yeah. So he's an example of somebody who can maintain engaged. So yeah, I love working with him, and I look forward to doing some more work with him next year.
Oh, class. So, Gillan, I suppose the last thing then is, you know, you've helped me out through all my years of uni, and I've helped me with any video problems I've had, and now you're helping me again coming into the 20 years later, I suppose. So, you know, just want to say massive thank you for jumping on to the Fetch My Goals podcast, Fetch Your Goals podcast. And I suppose if people wanted to get in touch with you, then where would they be able to do that, or where would you like to be contacted?
So go to clarityvideo.co.uk,
Okay.
or if you want to email us, info@clarityvideo.co.uk, and all of our contact details are on there.
Do you know what we'll do is we'll put everything in the show notes as well, so people can just get there quickly. And if you want, put in some of your social links as well. People can follow you. It sounds good too. But Gillan, thanks so much for hopping on. It's been great to talk to you today, and
It's been
best
a
of luck
joy.
with the business.
Yeah, thank you very much. It's been great to catch up with you and talk video.